So I've already gone over how the Sphinxes are the conservative faction of Dragon Lords, and seeing everyone's preconceived notions about what conservative means in the comment sections and news forums the past few weeks since the original leak, where that's all I said about them. They're conservative to Valyrian values, not Westerosi ones. They're different. Clear example is incest. They are conservative to brother-sister incest to maintain blood purity. That's a big one. As for religion, well, it's this odd mix of they practice a lot of archaicisms, but religion overall to the Valyrians was like Rome, where it's private, or they tolerate all religions and that you can even do more than one, so it's not like a conservative Westerosi knight to the faith of the Seven, a lord with a high septon in the faith imposing their views on other people with the faith militant. They're privately conservative and deeply religious, but religion in general in Valyria, like Rome, wouldn't try to force things on other people like that. That's just an alien concept to them. So it's not publicly a matter of policy that they're promoting an agenda of a religious conservatism. That's not really something they do any more than the Romans would. And I think it's strongly implied that we knew there were sorcerer princes in Valyria, and they are the most religious. Religion is tied to magic, therefore they're probably the ones that are strongest in religion with a magic sword and calling spells and all kinds of things. Still, it's interesting seeing everyone's reaction to this the past few weeks. There's not much more to go on, and just the Sphinxes are the conservative faction. That doesn't sound very attractive to today's trendy young audience. So the question that comes up is, how do you make conservative sexy? Well, the answer is simple. Make it gay! The lead Sphinx character, a POV core cast member, is openly homosexual and in a long-term, committed same-sex relationship. A short version of this for book readers: Valyria's attitudes towards LGBT, homosexuality, we were never directly told before, but it turns out they're basically like the Rhoynar, or the Dornishmen, of the books. Think about it, Valyria was basically a fantasy analog of Rome, with dragons. Thus, Valyria's attitudes towards same-sex relationships were similar to the ancient Greeks and Romans. Well, more like the ancient Greeks. The Romans had things, but they're an ancient civilization in that style of direct comparison. Well, they're like the Greeks, like the Greece of Pericles, or even earlier. Just think Achilles and Patroclus. But when I say that, and a difficult concept to get across, I talk about this in other videos I do, because I've talked about medieval views on sexuality and stuff for my graduate studies. They don't just tolerate homosexuality. It is technically wrong to say they tolerate homosexuality. They don't even recognize it as a distinct category. That it's not even something they conceptually see as different. That their society draws no distinction between opposite sex and same-sex relationships. It doesn't have labels for such things, not just in terms of words. In my source, I was going with them. There, in a problem in the main series, when fans try to explain this, is there is no in-universe term, gay or homosexual. Those are modern labels, modern terms. And my source, yeah, like the series Bible didn't invent a new term for homosexual or gay, and that's kind of an issue. That how do you refer to that? And it's not just labels lead to mental constructs, social constructs of they don't even think in such terms. We might loosely say this is that they're pansexual as opposed to bisexual. They don't even see a category difference. It's not, well, we accept both, it's we don't even see a distinction. But this is a whole longer discussion on that. If you're trying to explain what the Greeks were like to modern people, trying to say, well, they tolerate homosexuals, they don't even see them as different or as a thing. But in that mode, like the Rhoynar, they're like the Rhoynar. I will say that the direct example I was given to draw contrast with is how Renly and Loras had to keep their relationship a secret in Westeros. My source said, well, you know how Renly and Loras had to keep their relationship a secret? In contrast, the lead Sphinx POV character is openly in a same-sex relationship. That contrast that with how they were hiding it, and the TV show really dropped the ball on that, playing around with it. It's out in the open, and it's not treated as something shameful. Now, let me be absolutely clear. Valyrian society in general tolerates LGBT people, homosexuality. It is not something specific to the Sphinxes. The young dragons are just as likely to have openly gay characters. I mean, this is a society where a lot of the lords think they're above gods, or there is no one religion to yell at people, so you can have different belief systems, and no one can tell them this is moral, this is immoral. That just their culture, overall, mainstream Valyrian society, both political factions, tolerate gay people, open same-sex relationships, whatever label you use. So it's not the Sphinxes, it's all Valyrians. That even the lead Sphinx POV characters' political enemies among the young dragons don't think that their same-sex relationship is unusual or notable enough to even remark on. That there are gay young dragons too. They might not be the main POV characters, but there's people like that on both sides. And just to emphasize that Valyria tolerates homosexuality, even the leader of their conservative faction, or one of the top leaders, I don't know if it's the leader, a prominent member, is openly in a same-sex relationship, and to show this really has nothing to do with what they're conservative about. Just people go, oh, the lead Sphinx is gay, therefore they're the gay faction. Was House Baratheon in the War of the Five Kings the gay faction because the individual Renly happened to be gay? Well, there's also Robert, this beer-swilling king who won his throne on the battlefield, or the strict duty-bound Stannis. What are they as a faction? Arguably, they're stubborn. Ours is the Fury, but and driven. But tonally, the impression I got, which might not be entirely accurate, it wasn't an analogy I was given, was not that, the Sphinxes are the Renly faction. If you loved Stannis, you will love the Sphinxes, these rule-bound, duty-bound characters. Whereas, and when people are, the young dragons are going to be the heroes, they're the Targaryen faction. At times, they sounded like they almost come off as the Robert Baratheon faction, of their soldiers who got up-jumped into lordship on the battlefield. Well, Robert already was a lord, but he's a soldier who won his crown on the battlefield thing. Think of that the way you do the young dragons, that they started out as soldiers and worked their way up. I really think it's more of this is me reading into it, like the contrast between Robert and Stannis is really what you're looking for in between the young dragons and the Sphinxes, or maybe the Sphinxes are a bit more Tywin-like, depending on the individual, but it varies by person, of course. Now, I will bring up, but not go into detail, that this isn't me. These mainstream publications like New York Magazine, their Vulture.com spinoff, just an article they had after Season 6 that Game of Thrones has a gay representation problem. That LGBT characters like Loras were marginalized relative to the books they were allegedly going to adapt. That there's an average, it's a big cast, that on average there's about 24 starring cast members per season, sometimes up to 28, listed as starring in the credits. Only one of those was ever LGBT, and it was Ilaria Sand. This widely reviled, offensive caricature of I'm not even going to call it a character, it's just bizarre. But you all know that already. That Shay in Season 2 was promoted up to starring cast, even though she's a minor character in the books, and in the show, really. Dude, it's actor favoritism. They like the actress who plays Valyria, so they gave her more to do. That Loras, who was a fairly prominent character, this whole Siege of Dragonstone thing, explaining what happened to Dragonstone in Season 7, it was abandoned. No, Loras led this amazing, heroic attack on it, forcing the siege, suffering all sorts of mortal wounds for a lesser man, but kept fighting, and then got burned alive by boiling oil, and we're not sure if he's going to live or die in the books, and there's that whole joke about he's going to be Darth Loras, like Anakin Skywalker, and he was just marginalized, and we kept thinking he's going to do more, or have a scene missing Renly after Season 2, and they kept going, oh, we had to cut that for time. Now watch this invented Ollie scene with no dialogue, that you failed your gay characters like Loras in the later seasons. Just literally one starring cast of the broader defined 24-person starring cast was LGBT, and it was Valyria. And they have, I explained this in other videos, they have this whole thing called Tier A, which I don't blame them for having a system where the core cast members, the really core 5 to 7 people by pay grade, are called Tier A, like Tyrion, Jon, Daenerys. None of those was ever an LGBT character. So just by the numbers, this isn't good representation levels, even relative to the novels they were adapting. I will say that in as many words, my source related to me that there's a mission statement from the Empire of Ash series Bible that, just for the tone of it and why the characters are like this and their world, this show intends to avoid mere tokenism. A lot of discussion about how, this isn't tokenism. When you have one minor guest character who's gay, that's nothing. Or minor recurring, that it needs to be those core 6 to 7 cast members. That it is avoiding tokenism. There will be gay characters in this. That it will make up for the heavily criticized lack of diversity in the Game of Thrones TV series. Relative even to the books for women and gender, also for race, that's another big one I'm going to talk about in the next video, and for LGBT characters. In as many words, this isn't me reading into it, by comparison to Game of Thrones Tier A system, that the core cast are Daenerys, the 3 Lannister siblings, and the Stark siblings. Which makes sense. They're the characters in the books who had the most POV chapters, but by comparison to those core cast, not just, it's like Oberyn or Loras, I was told that the lead Sphinx POV character, who happens to be gay, is indeed a core cast member like that. Core 6 to 7 characters intentionally as a response to tokenism. So it's a character, I don't know if it's directly comparable, but it's someone on the scale of a Tywin or a Catelyn or a Jaime. I don't know how old they are, so it might be more of a Tywin, might be more of a Jaime. I keep, in my mental picture of this, I keep thinking a Jaime scale character. Someone whose political leader gets if this was a book, would get POV chapters. Not even like a Renly scale character. This is someone who we would be reading narration from if it was a novel. Now, another issue is, thinking back on it, I don't think my source specified if the LGBT Sphinx POV character is male or female. The term they kept using was gay, never lesbian. If they said lesbian, I would have remembered that. But, people can use gay to refer to anyone in a vague sense. Many have already contacted me, just, forum comments, whatever, that expressing their hope that this is a male gay character, because female gay characters have too often been used for male gay sex fantasies, not serious attempts at representation and diversity. We should have male and female gay characters represented. I mean, look at the Clexa fan base, and the controversy from killing her off from the 100 led to the creation of that Clexicon thing of celebrating queer women characters. But in this case, in the context of this franchise specifically, not like DC Comics or Marvel or something in general, that this franchise, no one can say that Benioff and Weiss made mature attempts at representing gay women, much less long-term gay relationships between women. Name one that wasn't just flirting for the sake of the male gaze of the camera. At least they had Loras and Renly in there as a male relationship. I can't name a single female-female gay relationship in the show. Fans deserved better. Okay, I'm not gay. I'm saying this in terms of even what they did as a straight white male, seeing them acting out their basically sex fantasies with Ilaria Sand flirting with Asha Greyjoy, that insulted my intelligence and our dignity of the quality we should expect from writing. That our dignity deserves better than that. That I will not be part of this. I don't know, but everything else Empire of Ash is trying to do with diversity in terms of race and women in general seems head and shoulders above what Game of Thrones screenwriters did. That there's a whole section of the series Bible going, this is a show that will be a triumph of diversity in ways the original wasn't. They didn't say that in as many words. They're just essays about they're trying to move beyond just tokenism. And my conclusion is, even if the lead Sphinx actually is a gay woman, I don't think we should reject that out of hand. Because from everything else they were doing with race, with women, I got the feeling that they were doing this out of maturity. And so it's a mature attempt at representation. What if they said, well, they're the conservative faction, and it's also that they did say, like, women can be dragon riders, women can be politicians in Valyria, in either faction. That they're gender blind, they're orientation blind, that you can be whatever. So there probably are, in principle, Valyria would have gay male and gay female politicians and dragon riders, and no one thinks it's weird. That maybe they wanted to emphasize, okay, they're the conservative faction, but their conservatism is about blood purity. It has nothing to do with gender, so let's make their lead character a woman. On top of that, their conservatism has nothing to do with sexual orientation, so let's make it a gay woman. I can see intellectually why you would do that, and why it might actually be a good idea, just to show how different it is from Westeros. But given the context of all the criticisms they faced in the past, and not just this show, but other things going, you aren't doing this for representation, you are doing this for straight male titillation, and it insults me that I'm being forced to watch your softcore pornography. Mr. I represent the perv side of the audience, put in more female frontal nudity. You all know what I'm talking about. That just don't reject it out of hand if they do say this turns out to be a woman, because from everything else they're doing, I think they would do it. Well, we wanted to show what their gender norms are different than ours. But, so I felt that it was probably male, particularly because the comparison of Renly and Loras was used to me, so in that context, and they never said lesbian, they said gay or homosexual, and just the Renly-Loras comparison, that I think these people seemed like they were smart enough to know to really be transgressive representation that really breaks ground and to be praised, it needs to be gay men, because fantasy stuff, and particularly this franchise, has a fraught history with that. To treat this seriously. So we will see what happens. Discuss this in the comments. I don't think there's one right answer necessarily. I think they should go with a gay male character, though I can see why they wouldn't. But I'm moving forward myself, let me tell you right now. I functionally assume this character is male, and I think you should too until proven otherwise. And on top of that, Game of Thrones really ignored specifically the complaints of its female audience, and it only got worse over time. Remember Season 2, the happy, naive days when we were complaining about, hey, guys, there's kind of a nudity imbalance between men and women on this show. You should treat the women better by making this even. By Season 5, we were complaining about invented rape scenes, and by Season 7, we had slid into learned helplessness and stopped asking questions. You deserve better. Or, large numbers of women just plain stopped watching the show. Who was left? That is the problem facing us. There are large numbers of women who do not watch the show anymore. Yes, there are some who still do, but I personally know and have seen lots of women, both online and offline, who just stopped watching the show. And the question now is how to win them all back. The answer, of course, is hardcore gay male eroticism. Gay vampires. Bishonen. For example, this is just trying my hand at this. The pace of the two men grew furious. Hard muscle slammed into hard muscle as he embraced his lover, hands exploring over his taut body, smooth and slicked by their sweat. Surges of pleasure made his broad shoulders buckle, but he didn't want it to end. He held back as long as he could. The strain hurt so much, and yet it felt so right. Now, obviously, a female staff writer will make better yaoi lines than I can. That was terrible. This is just an example, you understand, of you have to put in stuff like that. Now, guys, I know this sounds crazy, but we've got our best lab boys working on this, and they figured out that boy on boy equals money from the female fan base. We've run all the tests. How do we get women back? If we take the sex appeal to women of arrogant, brooding gay vampires, combined with the sex appeal of gay incest from supernatural fandom, combined with the raw, brooding sex appeal of Elric of Meldibidae from Michael Moorcock's Elric saga, the world will beat a path to our door, panties in hand. This, gentlemen, is our apocalypse scenario. This is how we will get all the women who abandoned Game of Thrones to come back to the franchise. Now, a lot of this has been my speculation or subjective inference based on knowledge of the books and Roman history. Yes, I probably misunderstood some of the fine details. How accurate were some of the reports from George R. R. Martin's live reads? These are the hard facts that it's not just me reading into them or going, well, this is what the books are like. It's actually not that much. The Sphinxes are the conservative faction of Dragon Lords, who are descended from the original nobility of Valyria, before they discovered dragons. Therefore, they take blood purity very seriously and incest marriages. They're also more devoted to the original Valyrian religion in general, with archaicisms, but, as we already knew, religion is very tolerant or private in Valyria, like ancient Rome. More speculation, this probably means they're strong in blood magic, which we know Valyrian dragon lords in general were strong in, and they're the conservative ones. That probably makes sense. And I was also told that conservative has zero impact on women, gender, homosexuality in Valyria. That all Valyrians, Sphinxes or young dragons, they tolerate those. So, summing up, when I started to hear about the Sphinxes, I was a little hesitant, that just the first line, that, well, they're the conservative faction, they want to make Valyria great again. This is all in the space of like a few seconds before the person kept going on and explaining, well, when I say conservative, I mean this. At first I feared it would be some generic straw man, and when people reacting to this I've seen expressing these fears in comment sections, oh, they're the conservatives, let me guess, they're the villains. I feared it would be some generic straw man, evil conservative white Valyrians versus good non-white characters, or heteronormative crusader conservative versus the oppressed, pure good, lawful good LGBT heroes. No, it's not that simplistic. It's gray versus gray morality of politics, like A Song of Ice and Fire, where there isn't really one clear good guy or bad guy. That the Sphinxes are hardcore conservative to their values, which are purely in the sense of they're blood and soil conservatives. They want to halt immigration and kick all the foreigners out who they think are trying to move in on their power structure. That blood and soil nationalism, well, they're not elitism. They're not on a crusade to force other people to follow their religion. They're not. That's not how religion works in their society. They openly tolerate women in politics and warfare, and they openly tolerate homosexuality. They're conservative in the sense of a conservative Roman patrician. That it's not all the other things that a modern person might associate with their current political climate's conservatism. All these other things, well, that's not an inherent part of conservatism as a construct. I mean, in America, is a Republican conservative and is a Libertarian conservative? Well, they're economically conservative, they both are, but that means different things on social issues. So conservatism means different things in different contexts, and they are wholeheartedly conservatism. Blood and soil, purely, nothing else. It doesn't affect, like, their views on gay people. So if you can, screen cap this and, like, spread it around Twitter, because it's the basic summary of the two Dragonlord factions, that the Sphinxes are the dominant faction for a long time. They're starting to fade, the other factions are starting to challenge them. That they're the dominant faction when the story begins. They descend from the original pre-dragon Valyrian nobility, and they're conservative, probably powerful with blood magic, and basically their XP version of the Optimates from the Roman Republic. The Young Dragons, on the other hand, are the weaker of the two Dragonlord factions, new men, warlords who gained wealth and power from plunder in Valyria's wars of conquest, and they're not as obsessed with blood purity, and they're analogous to the Populares from the Roman Republic. Now, this ran really long, as you can see, and I didn't really say much new. I was providing context, just, well, they're conservative and they're the original nobility, and you can pretty much suss out from the novels what being a conservative Valyrian is like. That I was told, but it wasn't stuff we didn't already know, really. Well, they take their religion seriously, they take incest seriously. So this is what the Sphinxes are like, and just, I kept thinking, as a history major, that one of my teachers said, history majors really love mystery novels and mystery shows because that's what we do, where we go on clues and try to peel back the evidence. That, for me, ultimately, they're the conservative faction. I kept thinking it's the mystery element appeal to me, of peeling back the layers and debating the mystery of the Sphinxes is going to be really interesting. Now, I know that's not for everyone. If peeling back the narrative layers of what the Long Night was like doesn't appeal to some people as much as individual character descriptions in the here and now. That talking about, I don't know, the Missandei Grey Worm relationship in the TV series on a character level is more interesting to them than me reading a thing on this is what the culture of Nath Island is like. Which I like the world building. I like the mystery element of peeling back the historical layers and the debate of it. So that, me personally, that's what makes the Sphinxes so interesting, the riddle of the Sphinx. And this is running long, so the next faction video won't be this long. This one was to describe Valyria as a whole and the Dragonlords and stuff I left out of the Young Dragons video, because if you average them both out, they're both like an hour. I cut stuff from the Young Dragons video, I moved into this one to save time on that one as the starter video, the easy one. No other video will be this long, I assure you. Next, I'm going to make the final of the 3 major faction profile videos I intended to make, and this one is going to be on the Freeholders and Sothorios.